Alright, so Tiger's back. He's got 2 rounds under his belt at Torrey Pines, and he is, well, everyone's noticed he's struggling a bit in his comeback. So I wanted to make a video pointing out a few of the things that are giving him challenges and the things he's going to be dealing with moving forward with his surgically repaired back and his new golf swing. So there's going to be 4 points we're going to look at. The first point is going to be left hip flexion. The second point is going to be dual hip rotation, or lack thereof, as we'll see. And the third point is going to be torso and ribcage rotation. And all 3 of those things are going to lead us to looking at the 4th point, which will be his club head stability through impact and his rate of closure. So let's start by taking a look at this video on the right, which is of Tiger Woods in 2002 in his prime, or his peak. And we're going to focus on this area here. So as he starts his downswing, when we get to here, leading all the way into impact, we're going to see he's done a really good job creating and maintaining left hip flexion. And he doesn't release it until well after impact. So left hip flexion is important because it allows, and you'll see this here, that left hip to continue moving back and around this way as he approaches the ball. So we can really see that. And then we also see his right hip moving that way. That's what we mean by dual hip rotation, and how awesome he used to be able to do that. So you can think of this almost as if, and I'm borrowing this from Kelvin Miyahira, this term or analogy, but if you think of his spine almost like the center pole for a revolving door, like the kind you'd see at the airport or the mall, and his hips are the doors, you can sort of get that image of how his hips moving together, get a bit of force coupling, and it's like an endless revolving door. Although we know he's not going to revolve forever. So now if we look at the Tiger on the left here, this video is from the second round of the 2017 Farmers Insurance Open on January 27th. We're going to look at the same area, and we're going to see some subtle but significant differences. So let's see if we can notice. So as he comes down, we're going to see that hip's not moving nearly as quickly left and back. And right about here, we do have the flexion, but we're going to start to see how he straightens up. Oh, that's not very good. Let's try that again. He's losing that flexion, and because he lost that flexion, or he created extension, you see almost like a stall in his hips. He's not getting that revolving door look. In fact, now we're going to see his hip movement through the ball resembles more like a traditional door, where you've got the left hip acting as the hinges, and you're simply slamming the right side, which is the door, into the door frame. So we're going to see that right hip trying to move, but it's not as easy when you don't have the dual hip rotation. Now this brings us to point number 3, which is torso and ribcage rotation. So if we look at Tiger on the left, clear all that, you really see how well he can keep pulling his rib cage around thanks to how well he moves his hips. So we're going to see here that rib cage up here keeps going, that right shoulder stays lower longer, and you get that classic Tiger's natural, powerful looking finish. It's a vintage Tiger. Now if we look over on the left side, we can already see here, with less rotation happening, naturally that means he's not going to be able to move his rib cage quite as well. And so he's going to try, but since his hip's stalled, ribs can only go so far. And this is what you hear the guys talking about on TV about his right shoulder coming up. You see, he can't keep it down as long. And his finish has more of a forced look to it, which we're going to talk about in a second. But it's certainly not quite the same as the vintage Tiger look. It almost looks like his hands are out of sequence and whipping around, kind of in a last-ditch effort to play catch-up. So the big question is, how is all this affecting his ball striking? And to answer that, we have to take a look and think about how some of these moves, or differences in moves, are affecting the stability of the club head. And that is what counts. So over on the right, in his prime years, let's take a look again. So we would see that great hip rotation, ribcage rotation. That would act to get the club more in front of him, as you can see. And the other benefit was he could rely on the rotation of his torso to square that club up and bring it through. And the benefit there was he could keep his hands very quiet and stable as he drives them through the ball, and he delays that releasing or rolling over action until after he's hit it. So the effect is that his club face is very stable, the rate of closure is very low through impact, and when you swing as hard as Tiger did in his prime, that's something you really need to be diligent about. Now over on the right, let's get it back here. We know that he doesn't great rotation from the start. So the effect here is that his hands drop a little more inside. So now he's got a couple things going. He has to bring the club further from the inside, work harder to turn it over, and since we know his rotation's not that great, he doesn't have his torso helping him do this as much anymore. So he's left with one option, and that is his hands and his arms. So I guess maybe that's two options, but together they work as one. So what we see is he stalls, and he's forced to try to play catch up with the hands and make up for some lost rotation. And that's why his finish looks kind of out of sync and uncomfortable, since he's not really moving as one using the big muscles. But the net effect is the rate at which he is turning the club over is going to be much faster, and we would call that much less stable, since he isn't keeping his hands as stable through impact. And again, when you swing hard like Tiger, this can be very difficult to time. Now, there are examples of great players that can time it, they're very talented, but for Tiger it's particularly hard because, well, he spent the first 30 years of his life doing it this way. Or 30 years of his golfing career, doing it this way. Another important factor to take note of is by using his old method, not only was he able to keep the club more stable and in control through impact, but he's also able to take advantage of the fact that he was using all this muscle fascia to power the club through the ball. And the result was a little bit more horsepower. So now, since he's not using this anymore, he's kind of a mere mortal. You know, back in the old days, all those shots he used to hit that no one else could fathom, this is one of the big reasons why he had that extra gear. At the moment, he doesn't have that extra gear, so that'll be another issue he'll have to work around. So going forward, I would think that plan A would be to try to learn to move like this again and go back to his old release pattern. However, we don't know, but based on the way he looks now, perhaps his back is limiting him from doing this. And if that's the case, then we're going to have to give him some time and have some patience to allow him to try to find a way to groove a modified release pattern. And it does seem like it's going to be a lot more difficult. But that being said, Tiger Woods is the most talented golfer of all time. And if anyone can do it, he can do it. And I'm rooting for him, and I'm sure a lot of people watching this video are. But I guess my message is that we're going to have some patience and let him try to work some of these things out before we can see him contending back in tournaments and hopefully getting himself in contention in majors. I look forward to that, and I know we're all hoping to see him there.